It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, dig into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is my friend Pastor Todd Smith, and we're going to be talking about his brand new book, Is Church Necessary? The Migration Back to the Church Has Begun. Todd, it is always a joy to see you, my friend. Welcome back to the show.
Shaun, it's a delight to be here. Can't wait to jump into this subject matter. I'm really, really happy.
Good. Well, and as we talked about a little bit before the interview, I don't know if I want to say demographics, things have changed in terms of what people did church-wise during COVID lockdowns, people returning. I feel like our perspective on church shifted a lot in that season. We're going to get to all that in here in a few moments, but first I want an update. What is happening with the North Georgia Revival? Maybe give us like the elevator pitch version. If somebody just like, I've never heard of that, tell us what God's been doing the past few years. And I'd love to hear one or two of the amazing testimonies that you've had recently.
Listen, we just celebrated our 6th anniversary. Last night, as a matter of fact, people came from all over the country to celebrate with us, but we're approaching now 40,000 baptisms and immersions right here in our building. And God is just showing up. His presence is here. There is a level of glory that we're encountering. And we always know that there's room for more, and we're crying out for more. We're not content to where we are. We're praying. We're seeking the face of God. We're hungry. And then we're also just saying, Lord, anything in us that grieves you, offends you, causes you, Lord, to not be able to pour out your spirit on us like you delight, please let us know, and we'll repent of it. So for those that don't know, 6 years ago, I had a vision of our baptismal pool and no water in it, but I see it full of water and a strip of fire on it. And then the North Georgia Revival was born 2 weeks later when God's glory showed up in our sanctuary. People have been being healed, Shaun, lives being changed, people being delivered. Just here recently, we had a young girl that had seizures for 6 years, 3 or 4 a day, chronic migraines every day of her life, gets in the water, begins to manifest a spirit, a devil, gets immersed, baptized, and then here's the latest report. That was in October. This young girl has not had one seizure nor one migraine since her immersion, her contact with Jesus in the water. He met her and changed her. Talk about life-changing. Talking about a shift in your quality of life. The curse was broken off of her. And people all the time want to know, well, why the water? Well, it's just a place of meeting that nobody gets any credit or any glory. So that's one of the ones that just stand out that I just love to talk about because people can relate to that.
Well, and I'll say we got to visit the North Georgia Revival last January. And as a guy who's been to tons of charismatic meetings and events through the years, the level of presence and the fire of God, what the Spirit was doing in and on the water was more intense than anything I've ever encountered in any other meeting. So, as we've talked about many times, there's something really special and unique that God is doing in Georgia right now. And also, I appreciate what you said earlier in terms of, God, if there's anything in us that needs to be taken out, pruned, refined, that's something we talked about, I think, in our very first interview, that hosting the presence and keeping what God is doing kind of moving and growing over this long of a stretch, as you just said, I think 6 years, it comes at a cost that we need to be willing to have things uprooted in us, move more towards holiness. And I would just love to have you comment briefly on, has kind of not what God's taken away, but how God's refining you. Has that just continued each year?
Yeah, and look, the people cry out all the time, I want revival, I want revival. Most revivals don't last very long, and the reason is because it's not a plaything. It's not something where we just come and get zapped and tapped and chilled and thrilled and go, oh, wasn't that wonderful? When people really commit themselves to host the presence of God and to be a place of where the glory of God dwells, it costs. It is the most difficult thing that I've ever walked through. not in a bad way, but the Lord, when you say, God, anything unclean in me, any lustful thought, any manipulative way, my language, the things that I get entertained by, anything that grieves you, please highlight it and I'll repent of that. So you are constantly aware of trying not to offend the Holy Spirit. Now, not that he's fickle, okay? There's so much grace and mercy during this, but he's your best friend. He's your bridegroom, okay? That's important, that I want to maintain that relationship. It's not works based, it's love based. And the Lord will take us through seasons of highlighting areas in my life and say, Todd, I need you to deal with that. And why? Why? Because he says, I want to take you deeper. I want to put more glory on you. I'll never forget, Shaun, one day as we were seeing miracle after miracle, the presence of God, prodigals coming home, people just weeping before the Lord. In a private time of prayer, I said, Lord, please increase your glory in our church, please. And I heard the voice of the Lord say to me, as clear as you and I are talking, then increase your brokenness. That's not the answer I was expecting. I was expecting the pat on the back, that a boy, I'm going to bring some more glory. I'm going to astound you with what I'm about to do. But when I cried out, God, increase your glory, he said, then increase your brokenness. I discovered, Shaun, that revival sits on the shoulders of men and women. It's not so much, in my opinion, a sovereign thing where God just comes regardless of our attitude and posture of heart. He says, I look. This is what he says. Of all the things that I can present to God, my education, my church building, the campuses that a pastor may have, and you say, Lord, I'm a candidate for revival. If you're going to use anybody, use us. Look, Lord, what we can provide. We've got the internet, we've got technology, et cetera, et cetera. But in Isaiah 66, verse 2, he says, this one thing I'm looking for that ought to get our attention. One thing I look for, as he's scanning my resume, so to speak, he says, I look for a broken and contrite heart, and he who trembles at my word. So I can present everything to him that I think naturally why he ought to bless us. But he says, the only thing I'm looking for is someone who has a broken and contrite heart before me. And then he says in Isaiah 57:15 that he would revive that person who has a broken and contrite heart. So when I say revival sits on the shoulders of men and women, that the moment we become prideful, the moment that we become like, hey, this is our thing, and take ownership of it and think that our spirituality has brought us this, or our good preaching or our good worship, the hand of God just lifts. That's because I'm no longer broken and contrite. I'm no longer, it's about me now. And it's a hard thing. I mean, it really is. And I believe that's why a lot of revivals don't last very long.
Well, thank you for the update of what God is continuing to do in Georgia. And let me say, if you've never been, I would encourage you to head up to Dawsonville or down, depending on where you're coming from, on a Sunday night and just see what God is doing there. It's very special. It's something you definitely want to be a part of if you have the opportunity. Now let's transition into the story behind the book. As an author and a publishing guy, I'm always curious, where did this idea get started? So for you, for this new book, uh, where did this idea get planted in your mind? How'd you start down this path?
Well, I got frustrated because of conversations that I heard with my own ears and that I was hearing circulating throughout the body of Christ. And it would go similar like this. You know, church is not necessary. I can be a Christian without going to church. Church is an add-on, or I do my church at home with my family online, or I have my special podcast, et cetera, et cetera. So the conversation just kept evolving to now where there is just this loose approach to church. And people say all the time, church is man-made. It's a man-made organization. Its structure, its policies. It wasn't, God's plan, et cetera. I said to the Lord, I said, I want to investigate this. I really want to take a look at what the Bible says about the local, mechanized, organized, structured church. And Shaun, I was amazed as I took the Bible in the New Testament and discovered the value and importance of the local church. Not that it was man made, no, the local church was planned in the heart and mind of God. This building that I'm in, buildings that are literally dotting the entire American and world landscape, is not man made. It is God birth. It is God's plan for reaching the world. And as someone said, the local church is plan A, and there is no plan B.
Well, before we get into some of the deeper content, I actually want to go to chapter 1, where the chapter titled "Some Pay a Price," and I thought this was a really great way to start out the book because we got some sense of inconvenience during the lockdowns. We saw churches being closed during COVID. Some of us might feel inconvenienced if a church time conflicts with their son's baseball game or this, that, or the other thing. We can just catch the podcast later, after all. But why did you start the book talking about what Christians, what churches are experiencing in places like Nigeria, China, Iran? We have a very rosy church experience here in the West. Things are very different in other parts of the world.
Yeah, well, again, it underlines the value that God places on the local church. Here in the West, we can take it or leave it, because we get offended, we get hurt, we get, discouraged, frustrated, et cetera, et cetera. But you take the people that are in these areas of severe persecution, they will risk life and limb to get to a gathering, a local church. Now, it may be meeting under a bridge, it may be meeting in an underground, undisclosed location that only the church members know, but they realize the value and importance of doing life together, and they will risk their employment, being incarcerated, shipped uh, to the middle of the ice fields, if you will, and to do hard labor for the remainder of their life and never see their children and their spouse again. They understand this. This is the heart of God. And we, again, often in the West, we just say, I can take it or leave it. It's a part of my life. No, in the Bible, this is important. Now we're going to go back to the Bible, not our feelings, not our emotions, not our experiences, but in the Bible, the local New Testament church, structured, mechanized, organized, was the center of their life. Not an add-on, but the center. Mm-hmm.
You have another insightful chapter talking about something to the effect of a devastating demonic spirit at work, kind of trying to paralyze believers. Talk to us about what I would say feels like and sounds like a direct spiritual assault to really get us to undervalue and underappreciate what God's doing in the local church.
The devil hates the local church. That's just a given. He wants to isolate us. He wants us to get offended with people, to have bad experiences at church, and to pull us away so that we're over here by ourselves with just maybe a small group of friends that we meet at the coffee shop, and now we say, "Hey, this is my church." Okay, this is now these are my girls, these are my boys, and so he wants to pull us away so that we become ineffective. We become, I guess, focused on our own hurts, our own feelings, my own life, my own advancement. You have to realize, though, Jesus birthed the church, okay? And knowing that we needed community and family outside of sitting at a coffee shop and opening up our Bible and having a 30-minute Bible study. That's not your church. Now, I know as soon as I say that, people are going to get offended. People are going to get mad. They're going to turn it off. But that's not your church. Your church is a structured, organized, mechanized group of individuals that have collectively come together in union to propagate the gospel around the world. Now, Shaun, we can go in many directions with that because people say, well, I grow in my group. Okay. I grow in this gathering, in this Bible study. That's perfect. That's wonderful. I'm excited for that. But that is not your local New Testament church. You do not find pockets of that happening in the New Testament. You do not find it isolated and on its own. Hmm.
Well, I promise the book is not just doom and gloom or negative statistics. We'll go to a slightly happier chapter. You talk about benefits of attending church. Some of these surprised me. So, in terms of being in fellowship in that local church, even some of this is science based, research based, statistics based. What are some of the good things, besides being in community? How can it make a real difference in our lives?
Well, one of the favorite chapters that I wrote is chapter 3, and I entitled it Follow the Science, because that was a big buzzword. Remember back in COVID and after COVID, follow the science, follow the science. And so that's the phrase. Okay. And I wrote a chapter on follow the science. And here it is. I just love this, Shaun. And the thing that I want to highlight with this, there are four things or four benefits, multiple benefits, but one of them, when you go to church, now this is scientific studies that have been backed up by not Christian universities, but I'm talking about secular universities. You live longer. Now, this is powerful. You live longer when you attend church regularly. Um, Marino Bruce, a social and behavior scientist and associate director at the Center of Research, now listen to this, on men's health at Vanderbilt University, people who attend services at church, synagogue, or mosque are less stressed and live longer. Then they give the research of how they live longer and why they live longer. Another benefit, your mental and physical health is enhanced. Again, I give the research. I love this one. Those that attend church regularly, you stay married. It keeps your marriage intact. The statistic that I love. Now, this is from Harvard University, I believe it is, as well as Vanderbilt University. They found that the average divorce rate in non-saved people, the general population, I should say, is around 40 to 50% of all marriages end in divorce. If you attend church regularly with your spouse, you reduce that divorce rate by 50%. So the general population, let's say, gets divorced at 50%, one out of every two. If you are attending church with your spouse, you reduce that down to 25%. Then it adds, according to the research right here, I give you the reference, a secular university. If you are a nominal believer, non-church attender, your divorce rate is 20% higher than the lost population who does not attend church. Now, go figure that. Think about that for just a moment. No wonder the devil wants to keep us out of church, right? He wants to keep us out of church because that's where we find community. That's where we connect with one another. We encourage one another. We build each other up. We get words from the pulpit. We hear words from our teaching groups. All of these things. We have deacons over, watching out over us. There is this collective that wants your life to be enhanced. But once you know, hey, I used to belong, but I no longer belong, you disconnect from all of those safety points. Okay. And then you're literally free game to the enemy. That to me was one of the most astounding statistics that I found. Again, not from Oral Roberts University, okay, not from Sanford University in Birmingham, Christian schools, but from a secular university said, if you are a believer and you do not attend church, your divorce rate is 20% greater even than the lost community who don't even care about church. Yeah, that's pretty profound if you ask me.
Yes, many good reasons to go back to or keep attending church. Those are all things, no matter who we are, we want those positive effects in our life. Uh, I would be doing a disservice if we didn't touch on the deconstruction movement. You talk about that briefly in the book. And honestly, for people who've experienced church hurt, this is a ditch people tend to fall into. If you paid attention, especially to kind of Christian media over the past 5 to 10 years, there's all kinds of people who were popular, especially in the 90s and the 2000s, music artists and whatnot, who have deconstructed their faith, are deconstructed their faith. I really like how you talk about this in the book. You say deconstruction is a tool of the devil, and I would agree. I would say be nervous when the world starts praising you, telling you how you're so brave as you change or throw away, or all of a sudden, try to go about your faith in a different way. I don't know that we should necessarily be looking for the world's confirmation. For somebody who's maybe never heard of the deconstruction movement, just explain what it is briefly and tell us why it's so dangerous.
Well, it calls you to question everything. I love questions. Questions are great. That's how you learn. That's how you discover. The smart people ask tough questions. And with the deconstruction, your whole mindset is I'm going to unravel everything that has been of value to me in the Christian world. And if you look hard enough and long enough, you're going to find inconsistencies. You're going to find people that took advantage, or perhaps even hurt you and harmed you. And the deconstruction movement, I think, is one of the greatest tools of the devil, because it takes you away. It adds very little value to your life. Now, you may sense, or you may get a level of freedom and have that sense of freedom. Oh, man, I've never been so alive. I don't have the pressure to have to get up to go to church on Sunday. I don't have the pressure that I have to, be holy or be pure. God understands my heart. Grace, 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 all of this stuff. And I think, I think it is the tool that the devil's using to undervalue significant kingdom relationships. And there, at the very top of the list, there is a significant kingdom relationship with your local church. Okay. Not your church online, not your church, in the stratosphere of watching your favorite YouTuber or podcast. No, being connected to a local family. That is the will of God for all of us. But deconstruction, Shaun, I hear it. I never find anything really positive about it. It's always stripping us away from our foundation.
Well, I think that's culturally, we see that not just with the church, but younger people, especially the generations that came up after me. They've been encouraged to question their family of origin, the faith that they were raised with, our country, all the things. I mean, really, I feel like we have multiple generations of people being encouraged just to deconstruct everything, not just their church experience. We also need to touch on church hurt. Whether we're talking deconstruction or reasons why people shy away from church. They can often tell you a specific story about how they feel like they were wronged or hurt, or a family member. There's usually a specific reason. I'd love for you to touch on that kind of from a pastoral perspective. But let me also say I appreciate that you had some good uh, prayer steps and things to walk through to try to deal with some of those reasons why you feel like you can't go back to church to move towards healing and getting back into a right relationship with your local church. I was glad you put that in there.
Yeah, I know church, whenever you get a collection of people together and we're imperfect, that means we're going to have imperfect relationships, and people are going to say wrong things, do wrong things, manipulate, all of those type of things. I'm not denying that many of our churches are toxic. There may be a toxic leader. There may be overbearing, over controlling. I'm not denying that at all, not in the least. But what I am saying is God understood this. God knew that imperfect people were going to be at the very core of the structure of the local New Testament church. And in the book, what I love is I deal with that. But I highlight, Pastor Shaun, I highlight in the book of Corinthians. Now, this is important. Paul wrote 4 letters to the church at Corinth. We have 2 of them in the Bible, but he wrote 4 of them. This church was a total mess. I'm talking about this church had issues upon issues, problem upon problem. I'm talking about sex trafficking. I'm talking about prostitutes sitting outside in the lobby, the foyer, what have you. We're talking homosexuality issues, perversion, brothers suing one another, misuse of the gifts, right? First Corinthians, we're talking about that. Pompous words, but not walking in love. They were abusive. And Paul highlights this in the book. He says, here's all the problems with the church. This particular church took 4 letters, 4. But at no point does he give the local brethren an out or an option to say, it is so bad, it is so disruptive, y'all don't have to go. No, he contended to continue to fight, to get in there to work, right? And to love and to labor with one another. He even went so far to say, Shaun, that we are all a local body. People say this all the time. Well, I am the church. Okay, I'm the church. No, you're not. No, you are part of the church. Okay, you're not the complete church. Okay, you are a part. The Bible never calls you the church. All right, you are a part of an ecclesia. You're part of the body. All right, and that's the language that Paul uses, not the Western mindset. Paul uses the language, you are a significant part of the body. Now, he wrote this to not the universal church where you're standing out here by yourself, but a local, mechanized, organized, structured church. And he said to the congregation, he says, do not let the elbow say to the wrist, I have no need of you. Do not let the leg say to the hip, I have no need of you. Or the eye say to the ear, I have no need of you. Now, I'm paraphrasing, just using those body parts so people can get it. That's what he said, though. And what do we do when we deconstruct? What do we do when we say, you know what? I'm not going to go back to church. I've been hurt. The pastor targets me. The pastor's toxic. The leadership, I got offended. They won't let me sing. They won't let me use my gift. And what do we say? I have no need of you. I can do this on my own. That is not the posture of the New Testament. Shaun, what I discovered, this is important. I discovered when I opened up the Bible and said, Lord, talk to me about the local New Testament church. I found over 30 local structures, mechanized, organized, man-led churches mentioned by name in the Bible. Over 30 of them. Now, I don't know about you, but that's pretty significant. And I mention it. I give you the list in that book, Is Church Necessary? If the local church was not that important, or we could take it or leave it, the books of the Bible that were written to churches, okay? Paul's letters were written to churches, not to me, not to an individual, not to a coffee group, but written to the church at Corinth, to the church at Galatia, to the church at Colossia, to the believers gathered in a church at Thessalonica, right? And then he wrote a couple letters to whom? To pastors that were pastoring the local New Testament church. So as I look at this, as I look at the Bible, you cannot do, how can I say it without you guys clicking off? It never entered the Apostle Paul's mind that you would do life outside of meeting in an organized, structured fashion with other believers. That's his plan. That's the heart of God. People say, well, with Jesus, it wasn't that big of a deal. No, let's read our New Testament. The Bible says, as was his custom, he went to the synagogue. He was a church-going person. He attended a local congregation. And you talk about messed up. You talk about the local synagogue being messed up. He went to church with people that were going to kill him, and he knew it. It was his custom. When his mother and father lost him, when that episode when he was a child, they came back to find him. Where did they find him? At church. At church. Not with a friend, but at church. It's so important. Listen to this, the local New Testament church mattered so much to Jesus that he said this. He said, if you have an ought against your brother and you can't settle it among yourselves. Now, this is Matthew 18. He said, take it to, and he uses the word, take it to the church. The church. So even in his own heart and his own mind, he was looking into the future and saying the value, the significance of brotherhood, it matters. So if you have a problem, get to the local church. But what do? We run from it. We stay away from it because so-and-so's mean. So-and-so, what are they doing with the money over there? Look at, they all just act a certain way. They have an air about them. I just can't deal with that drama. I have enough drama in my own life. And so I'm just going to isolate myself. Well, you've just played right into the devil's hands. You are a part of the body. And when you go missing, when you're not participating in a local church, again, there's over 30 mentioned by name. In fact, they even said the churches in the region of. So there's this collection of churches, local, organized. I know I'm hammering this point, but it matters. It mattered so much to Jesus as well that he wrote 7 significant notes and letters to local churches, the church at Smyrna, the church at Thyatira, the church at Laodicea, in the book of Revelation, and so forth. He wrote them to the pastors and he wrote them to the congregation. And in one case, he said, I'm standing outside the church door and I'm knocking. And if anybody hears my voice, please let me back inside the church. I get it. The church is messed up. We really are. There's a reason that 150,000 people are leaving the local churches every single week. But it does not negate the fact that according to this book, according to the Bible, no, not your feelings, not your experiences, but according to the book, the Bible, it is very difficult to do significant kingdom life and to walk in kingdom power disconnected from the very thing that Jesus established. That's my conviction. And I believe I've got solid, I stand on solid ground because I'm stepping on this book, if you will. I'm standing on it. The local New Testament church mattered to God. It matters to Jesus. Now, Shaun, I know I've been talking a lot, but let me tell you this. It mattered so much that Jesus appointed pastors to shepherd the flock. That's what he says. He says, I am giving to the church. Again, not your group that meets in a home, huddled up on the side because all 4 of you have a grievance against the local New Testament church. He gave it pastors. He gave it evangelists, so that those evangelists are going to go out and win the world and bring them back to the local New Testament church. He gave us teachers. For whom? The local church. That's what he says in Ephesians 4. Let's stick with the Bible. To equip the saints for the work of the ministry. He's given pastors and evangelists and teachers and prophets to give direction to the church, and apostles. Now listen to this, to build doctrine and to build structure and to add new places of worship. He loved it so much that he gave them elders to oversee it, deacons to serve what? The local church. I could go on, and then bishops to oversee all of these collection of local churches. People ask me, can I be a Christian and not go to local church? Let's let the Bible answer that. It wasn't even in the thought of the Apostle Paul that you would do life outside of a local church. We have to understand, what is a Christian? What does that look like? A Christian, a follower of Jesus. Well, what did he do? He said it was his custom to go to church. So to be a Christian, you got to follow him to church. Now, Shaun, I know I'm just going off the rails. Your viewing audience is probably thinking, oh, golly, this guy has lost his mind. But I love this book. I love it. And I love you enough, guys. Your fulfillment, your equipping, your purpose can be realized in a local church. Yes, we're messed up. Yes, we got issues. Come help us. Come back to the house of God. We need you. The body needs you. We need your gift. We need your voice. We need your encouragement. We need your hug. We need you. All right. And this is how the Lord is going to win the nations, through the local New Testament church, not some rogue agent out here doing this, that, and the other.
Well, I think we found our soapbox moment for the interview. There's always one place, and that was that was fantastic. I want to just take a slight left turn for a moment, and this was a funny question you posed in the book. And honestly, as a guy who grew up in Minnesota, I would have thought about this up north because we don't have a church every like 5 inches. But I live in a small town of like 10,000 people in South Carolina, and we have a church called Church Street, and there's like some places 4 churches to a an intersection, and I'd never seen so many churches in a teeny tiny town. Can we ever have too many churches in any one location?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I know many of them started because of agreements with either doctrinally or something happened. Uh, I don't think you can have too many. I mean, I don't think, as I mentioned in the book, we never complain that there's a gas station on every corner. We never complain that there are like 10 hamburger restaurants in our city. It gives us options and choices. You may not be accustomed to more of a charismatic flow, but you like the more liturgical. That's fine. That's fine. Get involved. Now, it may not be operating in power. They may not be seeing signs and wonders, but you're there to be an assistant. You're there to be a help, to be an encouragement. You never know, that pastor may be on a journey. Some of the significant elders are seeking more of God. And there you are as a component, strategically placed. That's the key word, strategically placed in that local New Testament body to help, to encourage, to inspire, to pray for, right? This is why we need you. Take your family, your kids, your children. I'm talking about your spouse. Take your friends into the local church, knowing it's messed up. It's messed up. It's messed up. Your workplace is messed up too. Okay. Your family's messed up. I mean, we got crazies in families, right? But we're connected. We're still there. We do life with one another. Take them. You're going to be needed. You are needed.
And in terms of, reader's journey with the book, if there's a takeaway, a call to action, and we'll put that on two fronts for pastors that pick up this book and read it, what do you hope they take away? And for the person who's really fallen away from church, but somehow this book ended up in their hands, what do you hope they hear from the book?
Well, I hope pastors don't just get in line with the culture that says, well, people are leaving, let me just try to survive. No, I tell pastors to get a good selection of these books and put them close by, because people are going to come to you and say, oh, church is not that necessary, or we only come, once a month, et cetera, et cetera. We got all these other demands of our life. The pastor has to stand up, the leader has to stand up and highlight the value of community, the value of belonging to a body, the significance of their contribution, both spiritually, financially, and physically. All right. And they got to be bold. They've got to proclaim the significance of the local church. Shaun, I believe this with all my heart. The awakening that is coming to the world is not going to come to the stadiums and big meetings. They will be those, but that's not where folks are going to flock to. That's where life change can happen for a lot of people. There has to be in those places strong local New Testament churches so that these new babies that get birthed in those big meetings, all right, can have a place to come and be nurtured, discipled, encouraged, and to be equipped. That is the value of the local New Testament church. There is a resurgence. There are people coming back to the house of God. They've tried the other way and they're unfulfilled. They're thinking, I'm lacking significant relationships. I need a pastor in my life. That's why I say, your coffee shop, as beautiful as it is, and you're growing, but you need a pastor. You need oversight. You need people to love on you, to take care of you, to feed you, to nurture you, to challenge you, to stand next to you and say, I got to correct you. Your attitude, your thought's not right here. Okay? Iron sharpens iron, all of those things. Now, let me say this. People say where two or three of us are gathered together in his name, he's in the midst. So people say, well, he's here with us at our coffee shop. Please, please. That text has nothing to do with you gathering with brothers and sisters and saying, now we have a church because Jesus is here. When it says where two or three are gathered together there, he's not talking about gathering as a church. He says, if you're dealing with church discipline and two of you come together to deal with a brother, I want you to know I'm in the middle of that right there. I'm in the midst of it, and I will affirm everything that you say regarding that brother. That's it. That's it. He's with me if I'm by myself. I don't have to have you with me, right? So it has nothing to do with us gathering together. Well, he's here because two of us have gathered together. No, that's dealing with church discipline. I know I digress a little bit, but I had to get that out there as well. Get back to the local church. It's significant. It matters. It's in the book.
And Todd, in terms of people connecting with you, finding out more about this book, your other resources, the North Georgia Revival, all the things, where's the best place for us to discover you on the web?
Yeah, kingdomready.tv, kingdomready.tv, and then our church in Dawsonville, Georgia, called Christ Fellowship, Dawsonville, Georgia. That's cfchurch.tv, cfchurch.tv, or you can just go to YouTube and type in North Georgia Revival, hear all kinds of testimonies, and watch a few of our services, but make your way there.
And we'll make it easy like we do with every episode. We'll have links in the description and the show notes to any websites mentioned, as well as links to where you can pick up your very own copy of this brand new book. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Pastor Todd Smith. Once again, our book today was Is Church Necessary? The Migration Back to the Church Has Begun. And Todd, I want to say thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's always a pleasure and an honor to have you back in the show.
Thank you, Shaun. Love you, my friend.